The Denver Broncos, a potential buzzsaw in the making here. Their defense was already vicious last year, and their young offense was already improving with each passing week. And now heading into 2025, that already vicious defense added even more killers, and that young offense got even more dynamic. This is day 2 of this year's Bootleg Summer Series, 32 episodes covering 32 teams to get you ready for the 2025 NFL season. In each one of these episodes, we use film, analytics, salary cap breakdowns, and all manner of nitty-gritty football nerddom to answer the 3 questions that make up the central pillar of this series. What was this team's identity before? What is their identity now? And what does a successful 2025 season for this team actually look like? I'm not saying the Broncos should be considered Super Bowl contenders or anything like that, but I'm also not saying it. So, Brandon Perna, buddy, if you're out there somewhere watching this right now, just know, this one's for you. Roll the intro.
Welcome back to the Bootleg Football Podcast, and we are breaking down the Broncos today, carrying on with AFC West Week. And Denver, one of the more interesting teams last year, had a surprising season. I think had a better result than anybody expected with rookie Bo Nix at the helm, but the defense was ferocious. Sean Payton got the offense clicking by midway through the season, and they reeled off 5 wins in their last 7 regular season games to get what I think is probably one of the more unlikely playoff berths in the NFL last season. So today we're going through all the additions, all the changes, everything they've done since then, and how we think that sets them up for the upcoming season. As always, I am joined by my wonderful co-host Brett Coleman, and he is going to tell you how we're going to organize all of that today, because it's a lot.
General theme today for people to keep track of is last year was the worst this team is going to be, right? Because as we were kind of digging through here and researching everything that had gone right and everything that had gone wrong last year, you saw how simplistic maybe isn't the right word, but simplistic everything was. Like they were trying to bring along a rookie who was in an offense that he had never played in anything like it before. The terminology was different. The concepts are different. How he, got the football was different. Like they were 9th highest in under center rate, right? So everything was new for him. It was not the Sean Payton type of offense we're used to when he's typically had, these veteran quarterbacks that have been around forever. And at the same time, their defense was also very simplistic, but for a totally different reason. They were just better than everybody. So they could be simple on defense. So it was a very simple team last year, but they were really, really good. And so the reason why I say last year was the worst they're going to be was because I think everything that they did last year, they're still going to be able to do really well, and they're just building on top of that with all their additions and obviously year 2 of Bo Nix. I think this team's going to be really, really good.
Yeah, I would say straightforward more than simplistic, because they did keep it sort of between the lines, and I think this year we're going to see a lot more coloring outside the lines in creative ways, on offense at least, but possibly on defense as well, because they're loaded on that side of the ball too. So one of the more balanced teams, and I think one of the more interesting teams to watch. Just feels to me like it does to you as a team on the rise. And I think that's always a fun ride to take as a fan or an analyst or just as an observer of football.
So we're going to, again, kind of work through this central pillar, as we mentioned, the 3 questions that we always have to ask and answer every single episode. What was their identity before? What is their identity now? Or in the Broncos' case, are they just even more of that same identity? And what is the goal for the season? Because this feels like a team that is ahead of schedule from where they should be with a young quarterback. We'll start with the first question. What was their identity before? This is where we kind of go through 2024 and everything that they did well, everything they didn't do well, and what the brand of this team was before we get into all their offseason additions. EJ, I'll let you take it away.
So 2024 results, again, better record overall, and it really was that late season surge that turned their season to the positive. Overall record 10-7. 3-3 in the division. Again, very tough division. We're talking about it all week. Home record, these guys were absolute warriors at home. 6-2, 4-5 on the road, and in their last 5 games, 3-2. So on top of that, we'll talk about their power score. Power score is just whether or not a team is good at football. We took 6 measurements we think are very important. Can they run the ball? Can they pass the ball? Can they defend the run, defend the pass? How many points did they put up? And how many points did they allow? We use EPA to do that, and we just rank them in the league compared to their peers. So passing offense for the Broncos, probably the one that surprised most people because, again, beginning of the year, very simplistic. Bo Nix still getting up to speed. By the end of the year, they came out 17th overall in the NFL for passing EPA. For rushing EPA, also 17th. So a very balanced offense. Pass defense, number 1 overall in the league. Absolute monsters against the pass. Against the rush, 3rd. That's crazy balance from a defense. 1st against the pass, 3rd against the run. Points scored, they were 10th overall. Again, a very surprising number with a rookie quarterback. And they only allowed the 3rd fewest points in the entire NFL. So a lot of single-digit numbers in there. Overall, their power score was 7th best in the NFL. And for me, for my money, that makes the Broncos one of the most surprising teams of last season.
This is just a really, really damn good team. And they caught a lot of people off guard because obviously they're ahead of schedule for where you expect a team with a rookie quarterback to be. And they ended up being better than a lot of people expected. But at the same time, going back to last summer, and I don't want to say that like we called it. We didn't. But they even exceeded our expectations. But we were giving this team their flowers because if you just looked at the roster, we liked a lot of the pieces they had. And they just had to hit a lot of green lights as far as rookie quarterback development to end up where they did. And they hit those green lights. And so, again, I think they caught a lot of people off guard. But if last July, if you were looking at this roster, you're like, okay, they're going to be hard to score on. And as long as the offense doesn't screw it up, they're going to be really hard to beat because you can't score on them. And so I want to start with that defense that you alluded to. Number 1, pass defense and EPA per play. Number 3, rush defense and EPA per play. The talent on this defense was so good that they kind of didn't have to do anything fancy. Like they were really high in man coverage percentage. They were 8th overall in man coverage calls, which is the hallmark of just having a lot of talent because DCs only do that when they have the guys that can cover. But if you're looking at how they leveraged that advantage of having good DBs that could play man, they leveraged that advantage by just bringing relentless pressure over and over and over again. Like this team was still 4th highest in blitz rate, not because they couldn't rush with 4. It's not like a Carolina situation where it's like they had to blitz so much because they couldn't get home. They could rush with 4. They blitzed because they wanted to. They blitzed because aggression is their identity as a defense. And if you can bring 5 and 6 guys and heat up the quarterback within 2 seconds and your receivers can't get open within 2 seconds because, oh shit, they got to go against Pat Surtain, you kind of have no cards left to play. And so they were the best pass defense in the NFL because there wasn't really an easy out against them. You have to have a great receiving core like that can either A, get something against Surtain, which I don't know, there's like 5 guys in the NFL that can do that. Or you have to have a great number 2 that can match up with their number 2, or a great slot that can match up with their nickel. And they even just improved at nickel in the draft because, of course, they did. Not to mention their safeties can cover. Like you have to be 5 deep in terms of weapons to match up against this secondary. And even then, they have to get open within 2 seconds or your quarterback's going to die. And also from a philosophical perspective, like how they use this pressure, they weren't a 3rd down blitz team. Like they were 23rd in terms of 3rd down blitz rate. They were an early down blitz team. And for everybody who's a patron, by the way, you can find this all in the infographic. We post infographics for our patrons for every single team. We break down their blitz rates by down, by distance. We break down their coverages by down and distance. So if you want all the information on why this defense worked, again, if you're a patron, link in the description below, QR code on the screen, go become a patron. You get access to all this data that we're pulling from. But this was an early down blitz team to the point where on 1st down specifically, they were the 3rd highest blitz rate. On second and short, they were also third highest. On second and medium, they were third highest. They didn't really even start to back off until you got to second and long, which is when they were still 12th highest. So their entire mantra was, we're going to play the run with blitzes. We're going to get TFLs. We're going to put you into long yardage situations. We're going to keep you out of manageable downs and distances. And then on third down, if you're in 3rd and 9, okay, then we'll just play quarters. And you got nothing. We'll rally and tackle. So, we had a really long discussion yesterday in the Raiders episode about how DCs hate being in 2nd and 5. The Broncos tailored their defense to never be in 2nd and 5. Like, if you get them, with like a man-beater concept, they tip their hat and they play on, because you're probably not going to do that 5 times in one drive. Like, it's really, really hard to get down the field against this team. They're never going to give you 2nd and manageable. They're never going to give you 3rd and manageable. And then you have 2 seconds to throw. And you have 2 seconds to beat Pat Surtain. And now you have 2 seconds to beat Jahdae Barron. Good fucking luck. Like, that is why this defense is so good. It's not just because they call a bunch of fancy blitzes. It's because they call a bunch of fancy blitzes and you can't beat them man to man. That is the key.
They want to wreck you quick. Like, that's Denver's whole thing is, yes, our coverage is good, but we're not going to hang our coverage out there for 4 or 5 seconds long developing blitzes. We're going to wreck you quick. We're going to press. We're going to make sure you can't get out into those patterns in the first place. And again, if that is just enough to hold you up, forget it. This pass rush is going to run over your face. So Broncos were an incredibly balanced team, really fun to watch, and they even had balance within their defense, not just the balance that we saw between the offense and the defense later in the season. And I think the other thing that surprised people about the Broncos was if they checked in early in the season, yeah, the offense looked pretty notchy. Sean Payton was yelling on the sideline. Bo was, drinking from a fire hose. The defense was already playing really, really well, and people just went, oh, that's who they're going to be. They're going to be a great defense. The offense is going to, not produce a lot of points, and then we'll see what happens next year. And then a funny thing happened on the way to the Forum about midseason. It clicked for Bo. He and Sean started vibing. The offense started putting up points, and the defense was still suffocating. And all of a sudden, they went on this second half run that a lot of people were asleep on because they'd checked in the first 6 or 8 games if they weren't a Broncos fan and said, yeah, okay, I know who the Broncos are. And by the end of the season, they weren't the same team.
Something that we tracked also in the infographics beyond the EPA per plays and the point differential and everything like that. Something that we ranked for all 32 teams was average margin of victory and average margin of defeat. So it's like, when you lose, how do you lose? When you win, how are you winning? The Broncos were first in the NFL in terms of average margin of victory, which was 18 points. So when things clicked for them, I mean, they destroyed people. Like, they were even higher than Detroit as far as their blowout wins on average. So that is why I'm so optimistic about this team, is because, like, it didn't click all the time, but when it did, like, you were screwed against them, like completely screwed. And I do want to touch on Bo Nix, by the way, because I do kind of feel like the Broncos offense deserves its own segment here. If you did watch them early in the season and you saw how discombobulated they were, getting the play call into Bo, having him, sit there in the huddle and spit out a Sean Payton play call, which we know were famously long, there was a lot of communication issues early on. And that's why this was a team that, had a ton of timeout wastage early on in the season. And in fact, that's backed up by data. If you're looking at first or third quarter offensive timeout usage, generally speaking, that is going to be a wasted timeout, is how coaches refer to it. Because if you're on offense, you don't want to be burning a timeout on offense if you're not, at the end of the second quarter or at the end of the game. Like, you want to save as many timeouts as you can for end of half and end of game scenarios. And so they were the second worst team as far as burning early timeouts on offense. And again, that comes down to rookie quarterback trying to learn the procedure. Everything's moving a million miles an hour for him. And they tried to simplify it as best they could, using a lot of screens, using a lot of RPOs, using a lot of play action. They were 12th in RPO rate overall, 3rd in screen rate overall, but especially on early downs, just manufacturing yardage. If you're looking at first down, they were 10th in RPO rate. They were 4th in screen rate. Their combined RPO and screen rate on first down was 25%. You combine that with their run percentage, and nearly 75% of all their first downs were either runs, screens, RPOs. This was not a team that really stretched the field early on in a series. It was, we're just going to try to get yards. We're just going to try to make things as easy as possible for Bo, try to get to 2nd and 6, try to get to 2nd and 5. And then on 2nd down, assuming they had a successful play on first down, they were number 1 in terms of play action on 2nd down. Like, that was when they were going to take their shots, when it was safer, when they still had one more down to try to move the chains again, and they weren't in 2nd and 10. It was going to be a hard PA fake. They were going to take a shot down the field. If you're looking at his passing chart, which we also have in the infographic, you see all those green dots at about 22 yards. That was second down play action shot plays. Like, they threw dagger over and over and over again because that's just what they were comfortable with. They didn't use a lot of motion. You know, they were last overall in motion percentage. And even though it ticked up in the second half of the year, they went from 32nd to like 29th. So they tried to keep it as simple as they could for a young quarterback who really didn't know what he was doing. And even though he didn't know what he was doing, he still played well. That I know it sounds negative, but I'm trying to convey how positive this is. Like, this offense had every training wheel possible on it last year, and they were still pretty all right. So, you know, going into year 2, with how, you know, good of a work ethic we know Bo Nix has, how coachable he is, like, I'm actually really, really excited to see what they look like, because like, this wasn't a Sean Payton offense that we're used to, and they were still 17th. Like, we'll take 17.
Yeah, it was not the full meal deal. We're hoping that we get to see more of the full meal deal this season. I think we will, and they've added pieces to what was an already good unit. It's not that they didn't have enough talent. They did, and they, you know, did what good teams do, which is continue to stack those pieces, insulate themselves against injury, and give themselves more options for explosive run plays. We'll talk about that when we get to the draft, but for now, let's talk about the power structure and how this team's set up. George Paton's the GM. I think he really deserves credit for acquiring talent that fits the system. The Broncos feel so different than a team like, say, the Cardinals 2 or 3 years ago before Monty Ossenfort took over, where they're just grabbing players and you go, yeah, he's a good player, but how's he going to fit in what they do? Or are they going to change what they're going to do?
What linebacker are they going to take in the first round this year?
Very much so. George Paton has largely avoided that, and his sort of mind meld with Sean Payton is very strong. And he is delivering the talent that Sean Payton wants and can utilize within his systems, and the same thing on the defensive side of the ball. So George Paton, one of the more quiet GMs. We don't hear a lot from him in the NFL at the meetings. He's, you know, he does take his podium shots, but he's not a loud, bombastic GM, but he is doing a very solid job behind the scenes for the Broncos, keeping this roster full for Sean Payton. Coordinators, Joe Lombardi, 30 years worth of NFL coaching experience. Defensive coordinator, Vance Joseph, 27 years of coaching experience. Darren Rizzi, even the special teams coach, 33 years of coaching experience. Sean Payton is big on tenure and experience, and that carries over into the notable coaches on offense. Pete Carmichael, his longtime sidekick from New Orleans, followed him a couple of years after he got to the Broncos. He is the ubiquitous senior offensive assistant, 31 years of coaching experience. Zach Strief, the offensive run game coordinator and assistant head coach, a very notable title for a younger player or a younger former player who's a coach now on the rise. And Davis Webb, the offensive pass game coordinator, is one of the hottest young assistants in the NFL and will be getting head coach looks overall very quickly. He might skip the OC shot. He may take one, but he may just skip right over that and be one of those hot young offensive head coaches that are always in demand in the coaching cycle. On defense and special teams, it doesn't stop. Jim Leonard, the defensive pass game coordinator, also an assistant head coach. This is interesting. I didn't know that you could have 2 assistant head coach designees.
I mean,
Broncos do.
There's no rules here. Like,
exactly.
When your owner's worth, $9 trillion, yeah, you just pay as many assistant head coach salaries as you want. Who
Yeah,
cares?
there's no salary cap for coaches, and Broncos are taking advantage of that. Jim Leonhard, also a very talented and fairly young in NFL standards assistant who will probably get his shot eventually to be a head coach in this league. I believe that. Joe Vitt, senior defensive assistant, 44 years of coaching experience. So if you start to add up all these years of coaching experience, Sean Payton has so much football knowledge and bandwidth to pull from in his office. And then Addison Lynch, the cornerbacks coach. Why do I bring him up? Because when you have a unit that plays as well as the Broncos secondary does, it's always very interesting to see who's honing those players. Yes, acquiring talent is one thing. Getting them to play well together and to develop, you want to know who's in charge of that? Addison Lynch, definitely a name to keep an eye on.
Even taking Vance Joseph out of it, who has head coaching experience, and I think there's a decent shot he might get another chance to be a head coach. Even beyond Vance, there's at least two more guys on this staff that I think are eventually going to be head coaches, potentially up to three. It's not out of the realm of possibility that Zach Strief eventually gets his shot, but, as a run game coordinator, typically the path is longer for those guys. Offensive line coaches, it's rare for offensive line coaches to get that head coach shot to begin with. But he is very, very highly regarded in league circles. Wouldn't surprise me if he eventually gets a chance. Jim Leonhard, I know, is going to get a chance at some point. And maybe it'll be after Vance gets his shot and then he becomes the full DC and then he gets a shot. But Jim Leonhard went to Denver, because Sean Payton was like, I can turn you into a head coach. And Jim Leonhard, I think, eventually will be a head coach because of that decision to go there. Davis Webb, everybody's calling Davis Webb to be a head coach within 5 years. He's seen as like the new Kellen Moore type, where it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. So at least two potential head coaches on this staff, maybe up to four. So it's very experienced, a lot of good football minds in there. I would probably say one of the better staffs, not just in the AFC, but in the entire league.
Absolutely, and gives you a better insight, I think. The reason that we share all this information with you is because we say, oh, yeah, they're ahead of schedule, and, oh, they turned a rookie quarterback into a functional quarterback by the second half of the season. How did they do that? This is how they did that. All this leadership in the building working together with a plan, hammering that plan through OTAs, through practice, through rookie minicamp last year, and coming out and saying, we're going to get it together. It gelled by about week 6 or 7, and for the rest of the season, this team was an incredibly tough out, and it's because of all these coaches.
So when we move on to March and we look at what George Paton did to set himself up to have the type of draft that he did, and oh, baby, he had a draft. We'll get to that. But they kind of laid the groundwork in March for everything they did in April. And if you're looking at their positional spending, there's a couple things that stick out to me. Obviously, quarterback, they're 29th because they have a rookie quarterback deal. Running back, they are 32nd. This is the cheapest running back room in the NFL as far as cap percentage. $4.8 million combined for their entire running back room right now as far as cap hits go. Again, they have a rookie, RJ Harvey. We'll get to him. I think he could start for them and be, as far as bang for your buck, one of the better bang for your buck running backs in the entire league. They are 7th in offensive line because this is a Sean Payton team, and they spend on the O-line as they should. Another notable one, they are 8th in terms of interior defensive line because Vance Joseph comes from the Wade Phillips school, which is when you get defensive tackles that are really good, you never let them go. And safety. Fun fact, this is the 7th highest safety cap hit in the entire NFL. If you want the full list as far as positional spending, again, that's over on the infographic on the Patreon. Now, as for notable losses, there's a few here that we want to highlight out of the entire group. Javonte Williams, who... Can I just have a side tangent about Javonte Williams?
Please do.
That injury, I think, took something really special from us. And he's still a solid player, but I'm telling you guys, if you go back and you watch Javonte in college, that was a special, special player. If he didn't blow out his knee, I think not only would he still be in Denver, I think he would be on his way to being a mythical figure in Broncos football. It's just we got robbed of that. but damn, he was so good in college. That's just disappointing for me. But, I wish him well with Dallas. Little Jordan Humphrey, he played about half their snaps last year. He is now a Giant. And then Cody Barton, just kind of moving his way across the league from team to team. Always been solid wherever he's been. 91% of their snaps last year. He is now in Tennessee. As for who they retained, who they wanted to keep in this core of talent, DJ Jones, we mentioned they spend a lot on the interior defensive line, brought him back at $13 million a year. Jaquan McMillian, who in my opinion was one of the better nickels in the league, also brought him back at just $1 million, and now he's going to be competing with Jahdae Barron to be their starting nickel. At least I assume he is, because a lot of people think that Jahdae is going to be an insanely gifted nickel at the next level. Maybe they find a way to get both of them on the field at the same time. I have no idea. We'll find out in camp. But either way, I'm not going to complain about having both of them, because having two top 10 nickels in the NFL on one team, sure, fine, why not? And then Justin Stranad, the EJ Snyder special, he got brought back at $2.8 million roughly. As far as notable third-party additions, this is where a lot of the money got spent. Dre Greenlaw, boy, as if they weren't good already. You bring in Dre Greenlaw, one of, when he's healthy, the top 5 linebackers in the NFL. Again, when he's healthy, brought him in at $10.5 million. He came off the Achilles last year, and as soon as he got on the field, before he got hurt again, he looked like he didn't skip a beat. Like, he looked like Dre Greenlaw, which was stunning to me. Like, you would never have guessed that he tore his Achilles, less than a calendar year before that. So I think this is an excellent signing for them. It's a kind of a short-term mercenary deal, and I'm sure he's going to try to get a bigger one after this. But as far as value for the money, if he plays, 17 games for them, that's another Pro Bowl linebacker that you're getting at half the market rate. And then Talanoa Hufanga, the other 49ers defensive star that can't stay healthy, brought him in at $13 million. Evan Ingram brought him in at $11.5 million. To be that classic Sean Payton seam ripper tight end. And then J.K. Dobbins, to add to the running back room as like a veteran, I'm assuming veteran backup for R.J. Harvey. They just signed him fairly recently as well. So overall, I loved, how they set the table for the draft. They kind of shored up a couple of their weaknesses in free agency. They improved on some position groups that I already thought were strengths in free agency. And they set themselves up to basically just take whatever values fell to them. And boy, they did.
Yeah, I want to talk about Evan Ingram for just a minute before we move to the draft, because if you remember prime Jimmy Graham in New Orleans, that was not a segment of the Broncos offense. Again, this, we'll call it straightforward offense that they ran last year. And Sean Payton was just waiting, and Evan Ingram comes available. They pay him not top of market, but they pay him at the top end of the tight end market, because there are a lot of similarities between what Evan Ingram does as a tight end and what Jimmy Graham did for Sean Payton in New Orleans. I think anybody that's made that correlation or connection is absolutely salivating at the prospect of Evan Ingram running some of those Sean Payton routes that Jimmy Graham really made famous in his heyday. So one of those signings that certainly one of the most pursued players, I think, landed with the Broncos, and some people were like, oh yeah, okay, it's another weapon. I was like, it's not another weapon. It's one they were eyeing very specifically for a role, and they already know how to use him. So I'm excited about Evan Ingram's prospects in Denver. But what did George Paton and Sean Payton do in the draft to, again, just make a good roster better? They start off in round 1, pick 20 overall, Jahdae Barron, the cornerback from Texas. We've already talked about him a little bit. We talked about him extensively pre-draft. Multi-role defensive back who is incredibly smart, played a lot outside of Texas. A lot of people thought he could be a very effective safety. I think he can do that as well. He's tough enough to play nickel and be in the run fit. The fact that he lasted to pick 20 overall, just a boon for the Broncos. And again, picking up dollars that other teams drop and saying, yeah, we're already really good in the secondary, but we could be better. And this is a value, so they pick up Jahdae Barron. In round 2, number 60, a pick they got from the Lions. This is R.J. Harvey, the running back from Central Florida. For my money, one of the most explosive running backs in this draft. An absolute classic slasher. And a lot of people were very, very excited about his prospects, certainly in the fantasy realm. And then J.K. Dobbins signed, and everybody thought it was a cold blanket. I don't think it is. There are very few running back rooms in the NFL that are a solo bell cow back anymore. They are all by committee with 2, sometimes 3 backs sharing the load somewhat equally. RJ Harvey was always going to be the explosive pass threat, outside zone / running back. J.K. Dobbins is going to take more of the between the tackles carries. He is a hammer. He is not as fast as he used to be, but he is still a very good player and a great balance. It's not that he's stealing the snaps that Harvey was going to take anyways. It's that he's going to complement him and take some of the wear and load off him. And when Harvey comes in, he's going to be fresh, and he is fast, and he is going to have some fun, explosive runs for Denver this year.
It's Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara. And I'm not saying that Harvey's going to be Alvin Kamara. I'm talking about role here as far as the hammer inside and the slasher, the receiving back. Like, Sean Payton has always done this. You even go back to like the Pierre Thomas days. He's always had a platoon. It's just RJ Harvey's going to get all the fun touches, which is why I really like this backfield, because it's like, oh, take the guy that runs low 4.4 and has good hands and use him as a receiver. Yes, please. Do more of that.
I just had a very odd vision of RJ Harvey showing up at the Broncos stadium on game day in like a clown car and popping out. I'm here for the fun touches. Round 3, pick 74 from the Panthers, Pat Bryant, wide receiver from Illinois. This is a very interesting addition because Pat Bryant plays a lot like a young Cortland Sutton to me. He runs a lot of the same routes. He has a lot of the same strengths coming out. And if you're going to be an understudy, what a great spot for him to fit in. Is he the automatic replacement? I don't think he is. Does he make a hell of a 4th receiver on this team? Yeah, he's a dangerous option.
4th for now.
Yeah,
right. I'll tell you this, folks. Again, not to go on too much of a tangent, I love Pat Bryant. Like, I really love Pat Bryant. We have a group text with Trev and Connor from the NFL Stock Exchange. When I got to Pat shortly before the draft, I sent, I don't know how many DMs in a row, but I was like, how did none of you tell me about this kid? Like, he's so good. I adore Pat Bryant. Great ball skills. He's a classic kind of X receiver. You put him outside, you let him box against press corners. He's got vertical ability. They didn't let him run a huge amount of just call them fun routes, right? The fun touches. But there was like a couple stutter goes on tape where I was like, oh, I think he's got it. I think he could do it. So, again, he's a 4 for now, but I don't think he'll be a 4 for long. I really, really like Pat Bryant.
Not forever, especially if he stays healthy. He does have that skill set, and he does feel, I'm really glad you mentioned it, he feels like a player that has some untapped potential. Like, we didn't see everything that he could do very well just because he wasn't asked to do it all at Illinois. And he was a player I thought I had a really good beat on, and then I went back and watched him about 5 or 6 weeks before the draft, and there was just some things I missed going through. It wasn't that I didn't see those type of routes, it's that I missed little nuanced things, which are incredibly important when you're talking about young receivers, and thought, oh, he's not just running that route, he's running it really well. He's manipulating the defensive back. He's got great body control at the catch point. There was just more quality. It was like higher quality reps than I thought the first time around. So really like Pat Bryant. We go on to round 3, number 101 that they got from the Rams, a compensatory pick, Savion Jones, one of the 2 very talented edge rushers from LSU. Just another arrow in the quiver for a very talented defense that already has rushers. They were not short. This was not a team that desperately needed edge rush help in the draft. But again, like Jahdae Barron in the first round, Savion Jones is sitting there and they say, this is a value. We're going to add to this defense. We're going to insulate ourselves against injury. And he's going to bring heat off the edge, folks. He is a very talented edge rusher, but one of my favorite things about him, he also plays the run extremely well. A lot of people who are talented with burst off the edge don't necessarily set the edge very well. Not something he suffers from. He is a rock over there. In round 4, number 134 pick they got from the Eagles, they get Quandarius Robinson, the outside linebacker from Alabama. And I'm going to share the reason for a lot of folks that didn't know who Quandarius Robinson was, why they picked him. Win percentage is wins versus blocking on non-penalty pass rush snaps. So it's a PFF stat, win percentage. If you sort all the edge rushers who were draft eligible last year from all of college football. He is 9th in win percentage.
He's up there. He had really good tape.
Top 10 player as a pass rush specialist. Now, not the greatest edge setter, but that's not what you're looking for in the 4th round. If you can get true pass rush juice, which Q Robinson has, absolutely. The Broncos are just stacking quarters here. They're like, nope, and another one, and I'll take that one, and I'll take that one, and they are going to come in waves. This is going to be a hockey team at altitude that just wears you out with pass rush.
I will say, though, because I understand the questions that people had about Robinson against the run, but I will say, the old adage, if I've seen him do it once, it means he could do it again.
Yeah.
There was a couple reps he had against Armand Membo from Mizzou, who was not even top 10, I think it was like a top 6 pick, something like that. We know he went really, really high, one of the best tackles in this class, and he set a really hard edge against Armand Membo in that game. So I've seen him do it. I know he can do it. I know it's in there somewhere. It's just on this staff to get it out of him, and I think they will. Or if you just want somebody who could stop the run on early downs, you just throw in Savion Jones and say, you're 290 pounds, you do it. Go kill that tight end. That's your job. And then you bring in Quay Robinson on 3rd down. Although Savion Jones, he can rush the passer a little bit too, not going to lie. You know what my comp for him was, ironically?
For Robinson
Savion,
or Jones? Oh, for Jones.
For Jones. And I think it's ironic because Vance Joseph also happened to coach this player back in the day in Houston. Connor Barwin.
Oh,
as far
yeah.
as like big body edges, plays 280 to 290. Barwin spent a lot of his time standing up in Houston, but he was a hand in the dirt edge going back to college, and he kind of did a little bit of both throughout his career. I think he works in personnel now in Philly. But my comp for him was Connor Barwin, and that is a massive amount of praise because I adore Connor Barwin. So you package him together with Quay Robinson, and they both kind of play complementary roles with each other. You kind of just took care of your left edge rotation right there, in my opinion.
Yeah, and you've got options, like you said, you can get late in the set of downs and pull up a NASCAR package and pick either one of them or put one on each side if it's late in the game. You're trying to rest your guys for the 4th quarter run. Again, you weren't bad to start with in terms of pass rush, and you added a bunch of talent there. No pick in round 5 for them. In round 6, number 216, a pick they got from the Browns, also a compensatory pick. Jeremy Crenshaw, the punter from Florida. And in round 7, number 241, a pick they got from the Texans. They go out and get Caleb Lorner, tight end from Utah, who's going to be a blocking tight end for this team and a special teamer as well. But overall, if you just look at even the first 4 or 5 picks here for the Broncos, they bolstered strengths that were already very strong. Again, we talked about their defense, number 1 and number 3 versus EPA, pass and run. And you stack guys on top of that, give yourself an explosive run threat with RJ Harvey. You did a fine job in the draft this year.
I think the only prospect I didn't really touch on there was Jahdae Barron, who's my favorite out of all of them. So I do want to take a moment to talk about Jahdae Barron. I had already loved him going into the combine, but, because the NFL is super cool and they let me do it, I got to go over to the media area and do a one-on-one with Jahdae during the DB day at the combine. And just in the 10 minutes that I got to talk to him in that interview, I fell even more in love because this dude, when he talks about football, he talks like a coach. And he is so experienced and he is so smart. And I get it. The physical gifts are great. He's super explosive, all that kind of stuff. The way he talks about football, I immediately was like, oh, he's going to play forever. He is going to play forever. He is Antoine Winfield Sr. He is Rondé Barber. He is that kind of DB. I don't necessarily care that he's slender. Some people hold that against him. If you take this kind of explosiveness, instincts, ball skills, footwork, and you put that either at the nickel position or outside, I don't even care. Hell, put him at safety. I don't care. Just put it on the field, and he will produce results. He is unbelievably gifted. I could not be more excited that he is in this defense because I think he's going to get a lot of opportunities to get his hands on the football. Like quarterbacks are going to be uncomfortable, and when quarterbacks are uncomfortable, they throw ill-advised passes to say the least. And Jahdae Barron is the type of DB who's going to pick off a lot of those ill-advised passes. I would not be shocked. I'm not saying you should go out and bank on this, but I would not be shocked if he is a front runner for Defensive Rookie of the Year. Like, I'm talking early. Like immediate impact type of player. If I was going to bet on anybody who isn't, one of the obvious, like Abdul Carter, I'm sure is super high up there. Shahad Campbell, super high up there. But if I was looking for somebody who's a little bit down the board as far as values that I think has a legit shot to win Rookie of the Year, it's Jahdae Barron. He is a special football player.
Listening to him talk both in your interview and other interviews, ones he did locally in Austin when he was at Texas, and a couple other ones I heard before the draft, you know who he reminded me of? Another defensive back, just in the way he talked about the game.
I mean, everybody says that he's a spitting image of Trent McDuffie as far as like on field and off the field. So Trent McDuffie?
It's a little farther back. Pat Pete.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Because he was so cerebral, too. Like, obviously,
sounds
he's
the
super
same,
gifted.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Different physical profiles, but in the way that he saw the game, approached it, broke it down, is very concise about it. Like, this is what I saw, this is what I did, this is why. And can just hook that together in a way that reminded me of listening to Pat Pete talk about football. So,
special player, man. But they didn't stop there. They got a bunch of undrafted talent as well. A few of their notables, Johnny Walker, the edge out of Mizzou. We saw him at the Shrine Bowl. I thought he could have gotten drafted, but, even if he didn't, priority UDFA grade sounded about right. But he's got some explosiveness to him. Inconsistent, but the flashes are there. Like even at the Shrine Bowl, he didn't win all the time. It was kind of either he won immediately or he got stonewalled. But, there's something there to work with. Maybe get him on the practice squad and see what he can do for you. Jerwan Newton, the wide receiver out of Toledo. I know he's one of your guys. Is it Joaquin or Joaquin Davis?
Joaquin Davis.
Joaquin Davis. Freak of nature, I'll tell you that much. He is big. He is fast. Again, put him on the field and figure it out, even if he's just there to run post routes all day. Like, good luck trying to run with him. And then Clay Webb, kind of an undersized but really light on his feet guard out of Jacksonville State. I want to say he was a former Georgia Bulldog off the top of my head. Saw him at the Combine. I thought he moved really well, but he is small. So I'm curious if he might convert to center because of that. But he's got really good feet and he's super quick laterally. So, he's got a shot, I think, at center. We'll see where he ends up. Might end up being a practice squad player for them as well. But, they got a bunch of UDFAs here.
Yeah, Jerwan Newton out of Toledo had a 5-year college career, really broke out in his final year, over 1,000 yards, 11 touchdowns, and really a technician. I think he's going to be somebody. There's a lot of receivers, if you look back in Sean Payton's past, that are like this, that he's used really well, usually as both a slot and sometimes motion guy to the outside for number 2. Jerwan Newton's going to fit that role. Joaquin Davis is the streak down the field. Like, he is 6'3", almost 6'4", really, really fast. And Johnny Walker didn't test super well. Again, had those flashes, had some heavy hands. There were some big blockers he went up against in the SEC that he just pounded on. By the end of the game, they just kind of didn't want to deal with it. And like you said, if he doesn't win quickly, he's not one of those guys that strings moves together, but there's something there. Absolutely somebody you would take a chance on as a UDFA. Same thing with Clay Webb, like you said. Really like the player, really like the profile, really like how he plays. Bottom line is he's not that big, so I'm going to wait and see if he's available. Take a chance on him, get him in the building, see if we like him, if we can bulk him up, or, like you said, convert him to center as a backup. But always appreciate teams that, even though they had a really good season, even though they're ahead of schedule, even though they had a really good draft, they go, look, there's a lot of talent here. We're going to go out and get guys we think are matches and see, because that's what the NFL gives us 90 roster spots for all summer, is to check those guys out and see if they're a fit in our building. And if we hit on any of them, it's free money.
And what's interesting to me about, the UDFA pool for this team. This is one of the rosters where it's really hard to make it. So, like, if you're going to Denver, you got to be really confident in your abilities because, like, as far as rosters go, there's just not a lot of spots here because there's so much talent existing already. Let's say they keep 6 DBs, right? So you got Jahdae Barron, Riley Moss, or 6 corners, I should say. Jahdae Barron, Riley Moss, Pat Surtain, Chris Abrams-Drain, who we liked a lot as a draft pick a couple years ago, Jaquan McMillian, who they just brought back. Their 6th corner is Damari Mathis. He's CB6 for them. So you're competing with him for a roster spot. And they brought in like 3 or 4 CBs as UDFAs. Safety, you got Brandon Jones and Hufanga and PJ Locke and Sam Franklin, who was one of the UDFAs they just brought in. JL Skinner, huge safety they drafted last year. There's just not a lot of room here. So, and that's a compliment, by the way, to George Paton for building this kind of roster where you look at it and you're like, maybe 2 of them, 3 of them max will make the final 53. And it's no shot at those players. It's just find the hole. I can't.
Yeah, it's more difficult than a lot of other rosters, and that makes it interesting to me that a lot of these guys, because it's not a small class, right? Sometimes you see teams that, again, overachieved and have a good roster. Even if they didn't do great, maybe they got a quarterback injury late in the season or something, but everybody's looking at their roster. Agents are very savvy. They're looking at the roster going, okay, where's my guy fit? What are his chances? How many reps is he going to get in camp? To have this many UDFAs, quality UDFAs, show up at a camp, they believe in themselves, but also I think they want to be part of something. They see that team ascending and saying, hey, if I can make it on that roster, even if it's on the practice squad and I get to develop, I'm going to be part of something special. I'm going to be part of a team on the rise, as opposed to, hey, I can go to a cellar dwelling team. I'm going to get some playing time, but I'm not really sure that the coach is going to be there next year or anything else. So I think that's part of that for this group of guys is, hey, they're in basically year 1 of their program with Sean Payton and Bo Nix leading them forward. We like where they're going. If I make it on this team, even for a year or 2, we could do some pretty special things.
Now, as for who we actually will pick to win the AFC West, arguably the best division in football. I'm not saying it won't be Denver, but I'm not saying it will be Denver. If you want to find out our picks this Friday, as with every single Friday, during the duration of this series, because we go division by division, we put out our Friday division recap episodes on the Patreon for all of our patrons, where we have our division picks and why we're picking those teams to win the division. We have our division MVP picks and offensive player of the year and defensive player of the year and rookie of the year, and for both offensive and defensive, and coach of the year and all that kind of stuff, just for the AFC West, as well as each one of us having a bold prediction for the division. So if you want even more bootleg content about this division, head on over to the Patreon. You get access to all the infographics with the accompanying data that we were referencing throughout this show, as well as much more data than we ever could have talked about in one show. Maybe too much data, some are saying, but we pulled it, so you might as well have it. Again, that is over on the Patreon at the QR code on the screen or at the link in the description below. And with that, EJ, halfway through the AFC West, 2 more teams to go. Chargers are tomorrow. How you feeling?
I'm feeling great. Can't thank you all enough for riding with us through this series. It's one of our favorites. We know it's one of yours. Definitely gets us excited in kind of the doldrums of summer for the season to come this fall, and it'll be here before you know it.
We'll see you guys tomorrow with the Chargers.